It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Alrighty, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcasted weekly from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand. If I pause for a second. Oh no, he stopped. Like the new guy upstairs, the new couple upstairs. I've talked to him more than her. He has a piano, and he's just got home from work, and he was tinkling the proverbial, not the proverbial. He was tinkling the literal ivories. He's learnt Stand By Me finally, which is great because that one took about 3 months. Was glad to hear the back of that one. This new tune I don't recognise. It's nice. It's more technically it's a more technically competent piece than Stand By Me, so it's nice to sort of hear growth and development in the evenings. Anyway, so regular listeners will know that I have been rabbiting on probably for about the last 7 or 8 episodes about trying to get 50 episodes up in a year. I've had mixed feelings about it. I'm crazy busy otherwise, and this is a hobby, a labour of love. But by golly jinkers, where does that kind of language come from? Like that sort of 50s, 60s kind of kids' entertainment language, isn't it? Anyway, by golly jinkers, I'll have 5 up in the next 48 hours. Yay! Because the podcast started end of November last year, and I was like, bugger it, I'm going to do it. So this is 46 today. It's with a guy named Theo Gibson. I first met Theo at Unitec in 2007. Regular listeners will know I am now involved permanently in an academic institution. At that time, I was part-time on a coffee stand at the Unitec. My first year back in New Zealand after about 7 years away. Hindsight being 2020, I pretty much say now I had a nervous breakdown at the end of my tenure in Melbourne. So I was in a pretty interesting headspace manning the stand. I was actually back doing a series of extraordinarily low-paid temp hospo jobs for a temp hospo company that would charge me out for whatever they charged me out for, and then I would make the grand total of $13 an hour as a 30-year-old. But it was good, got me settled here. A lot of the work kind of sucked, to be honest, but I turned up to this coffee stand one day. Theo and I talk about this at the beginning of the podcast, and there was a gentleman there that wasn't Theo. It was a gentleman named Chris, and he expressed his disdain at temps as I turned up. Nice icebreaker. And then within about half an hour, we were totally hitting it off, and I still now, 10 years back in New Zealand, consider Chris one of the absolute best human beings I've met since being back. So anyway, Theo would pop over. It turned up they went to school with each other, but he was a chipper fellow who'd be a regular customer as well as friend of Chris's, and I always really liked Theo. He actually helped out with part of my masters in terms of me interviewing him for the subject matter. It was probably the last time I saw him. When was that? 2002. When was that? Doesn't matter. 2012. And then I saw through good old social media that he was building an electric car from scratch. And I thought, what a curious project, and what a great project to get someone in to talk about, and what a great opportunity to get Theo to come back into my life, if only just briefly. It was fun. We talked about his other endeavours as well. He actually made a doco about the process. I'll let the pod speak for itself. Back to Chris. Chris, I assume you're going to listen to this with both Theo and myself involved. We had good fun. We had good fun on that stand. I always thought Chris was sort of grumpy but charming. That was his very charming. That was his modus operandi at the stand. I always thought I was a bit more mellowed until one day I served a customer with Chris, I think, sitting behind, maybe on a wee break or something, and I didn't realise how cold I'd been. until Chris said, "That was quite amazing, man." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I've always wanted to work somewhere kind of like Black Books." If you haven't seen that show, that joke will be totally lost on you. But that was my headspace with Hospo. We also stuck a photo up of a guy pulling fingers that we found at the in the newspaper that only we could see and the customers couldn't. And it was, jeez, good times, good times. Like the show Verbal Highs podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter. Like and subscribe on iTunes, please. And these last episodes of the year, if I could have a real push of people sharing and liking and doing all that modern way of supporting, that'd be great. If you're new to this podcast through the EV community, welcome. That's electric vehicle community, folks. Find the rest of the episodes. This is number 46, as I say, so hopefully something in the other 45 will interest you. Okay, on with the show. 4 more episodes in the next 48 hours, or is that 3 more? No, crikey, 5 more. This is, shut up, Lewis. This is the 46th now. So there's actually 4 other ones in the next 48 hours. I better get working. Here's Theo.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
They need, they're beautiful looking. I found them.
They just need something for your feet.
I was just going to say, I found them at the Salvation Army. I was like, they're cool. They're like,
Yeah.
it's like, I think they might be homemade. Like,
Yeah.
it looks like someone who makes saddles or something made them. So they're amazing looking, amazing quality. But
Yeah,
yeah,
quite comfy.
you just nailed it. They need something to hook your legs in on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, me making you a coffee is
Yes.
actually quite a spiritual journey back to where we met, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It is. It's been what? When did I first meet you? 2007.
7. Wow.
That's crazy.
And did you already know Chris, or did you meet him at the coffee
I
stand
went to
as well?
school with Chris.
Right.
We went to Avondale College together. So Chris and I were in the same drama class. That's how we met. And I think I stole his girlfriend at one point, which I've completely forgot about, but Chris
He
brought
reminds
up, every now and then.
So the story there, folks, is I'd come back to New Zealand and work wasn't forthcoming. In fact, I think at that point in my life I was kind of at a bit of a juncture as to what to do. So I picked up hospo work, as you do, through some temp company that would charge out, twice what I earned.
Spotless or something.
Twice
yeah.
what I earned, which was next to nothing to begin with. And I turned up to that gig, and there was a slightly grumpy guy playing the Clash. And the first thing he said is "fucking temps." And about 20 minutes in, I'd won him over, and Chris, who hopefully will listen to this at some point, remains one of my favourite people I've met since I've moved to Auckland.
Yeah, he's a good guy, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's down in Dunedin now, isn't he?
He is. So I should say who's with me today. I have the pleasure of welcoming to the show Theo Gibson. You might recognise this copy. A technology-based practitioner with a broad range of experience in theatre, film, and video production. But probably the main reason I've got you here today is you built a car that entirely runs on electricity.
I did.
And made a documentary about that process as well.
I did. Yeah. It was an exciting adventure. It took a bit longer than I originally hoped.
Did you drive it here today?
No, actually.
No, I brought my Hummer.
Yeah. No, actually, now I've actually gone slightly back, and I'm driving a plug-in electric hybrid, which is an Outlander PHEV, which is I ended up having to get it for work because in my current job I do film and television broadcasting, engineering, sales stuff, and I needed a big car to take servers and things.
So you've bought you got an off the shelf one, as it were, rather
off the
than,
shelf, which is quite nice, especially now that I've got a small child and don't have the time to tinker. But I do miss my conversion. I've actually sold my conversion to another enthusiast to keep it alive.
Well, we'll get to the economics of it later on, because it's sort of if you're purely money driven, which unfortunately a lot of the world is, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
But did you get something for it when you sold it?
I got 10 grand.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, for a 1990 Toyota.
Exactly.
So I was thinking before you came over, I was thinking about what I know of you, and you lent a hand on my master's thesis. I'm sort of talking about what you do, and I know you from when you're at Unitec and so on, and this car project and stuff. you're kind of a you're kind of a project taker, honourer, aren't you? And a sort of I was thinking about a problem solver. Where does this come from, man? Like what are you folks or?
Oh no! See, I was thinking about this exactly on the way here. Well, my folks are all artists. I come from an arts family, so I think many artists make a technician by the sounds of things. Because so my mother's an actress and voice coach and Shakespearean person. She's been in the. She's been in the
thespian, darling.
Thespian, yes. Yeah. She's been in the in the arts world for many years. Yeah. My father's a composer.
Wow.
And does lots of stuff for film and theatre and John Gibson. He wrote up, another genius. Wrote a musical in college, as you do, and. So I was doomed to be involved in artistic ventures, and then my parents split up when I was 8, and I've got a stepmother who's head of New Zealand Dance Company.
Wow, you do have a arts-rich family.
My brother's an actor. My sister's going to be stepsister's going to be an actress. My partner's an ex-dancer.
So sort of like you're lucky they got a technician in the mix, because it's like, there's someone here who can fix these messes we're creating. Yeah,
so I grew up with this family of, let's change your light bulb. Oh, let's get Theo to do that. So basically I grew up, no one knew anything about this sort of technology, but I did have my grandfather on my mother's side, Max Rands. He's 103 now and still going strong.
Wow.
He was a really interesting guy. He's a conscientious objector during the war.
Yeah.
Scientist, but built his own house, built his own boat, actually built a 3-wheeled car out of a motorbike and sidecar when he got back from these camps.
Wow.
And registered it and drove it around for, So he was a bit of an inspiration. So I spent many weekends in his shed building things.
So he's lucid enough that he knows about your car project and stuff?
Yeah, he was very supportive. He was when I started, he was the only person who kind of went, yeah, you could do that.
I was going to ask about that later.
Everyone
on.
else thought I was completely nuts.
Yeah.
He said, that shouldn't be too hard. I was like, exactly, it doesn't look that hard.
So if we've got a nature versus nurture thing, I see what you're saying. You're suggesting that the genetic line came through from Popper down to Theo. But then that's also interesting, because when I was doing my masters, I was sort of pondering it. One of the things I sort of side pondered when I chatted to you, it came up was this sort of there's this age old not debate but conversation about sort of creative versus practical people.
Yeah.
Wherever that ends up,
it
might be that in your job you've found sort of success doing. Dealing with actors and so on, because you are from that.
Well, I love it.
You know how they tick.
I totally understand how they tick, and I love the. Artists are collaborative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not generally about ego, or whereas the business world is a bit more, that way inclined. So, I just love working with people like that. So. But I got to the stage about 18, I was going to be an actor, and I went, actually, I'm a bit traumatised by my family. I love them to bits, but I don't think I actually want to be on the stage or in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Actually, if I'm behind the camera, maybe I could, influence the arts in that way. So went to film school in Australia, and that's where the whole kind of technology thing started.
Yeah. Because how old are you?
I'm 35.
Right.
Yeah.
So technology, do you mean technology thing started with you, or technology changes starting?
Well, a mixture of both, really.
I'm thinking about kind of digital coming into the mix.
So my parents bought the 486. I grew up on the 486 PC, and
I grew up on the Commodore 64.
So I had one of those as well,
Yeah.
And they had no clue how to use it, so they just would give it to me and say, fix this. And interestingly enough, as I was growing up, I always said, when people asked me what I wanted to be, I said, I want to be an inventor. Yeah. So that was, I think, too much chitty chitty bang bang or something. I don't know there, but
that's funny.
Yeah.
So what happened with the education racket? You just felt you'd done your dash at you, or you only took a long time, right?
Yeah. So went to film school in Australia, did a bit of an OE as you do, came back to New Zealand, majored as a sound engineer.
Oh, you do audio as well?
Yeah.
Oh.
I majored as a sound engineer and trained on this thing called a Fairlight.
I know the Fairlight.
Yeah. No one had them in New Zealand because we were all number 8 wire. So
there was one in Wellington, Theo.
Oh, that's true.
At Marmalade Studios.
It got shut down the week. I think it got shut down.
I was producing stuff in that studio in '99. So you must have been along not long after before they decommissioned it.
Yeah, I was back 2004, 2005. So yeah, basically when I left, they shut it down. But Fairlight was a gorgeous machine, and I loved it. But then got into 3D animation. I just do everything. I can't help myself. So got into 3D animation in film school. Yeah. Came back and went, I'm going to be an animator. So locked myself in a garage and basically just learnt Maya and 3D Studio Max when I got back to New Zealand. Tried to get a job at Weta, all that sort of stuff.
Did you make a film or?
I did a 5-minute little animated film thing.
I had these guys on called Makpari. Have you heard of them? Anyway, they make this show called Barefoot Bandits. Yeah. Probably a few years before you threw out. Did you go to the animation school in Auckland?
No. I just self-taught.
Self-taught. Back when there's like a manual with metal rings through, like just sitting there with that, or just intuition, or
just intuition, just playing with software. You know, it was just like, lots of tutorials and reading up, and I'm one of those people who, when I'm doing something, I just get everything I possibly can and consume it, and then try and work it out as I go along.
So we didn't close off the Unitech thing. So you basically picked up all these skills,
skills, and then was like, shit, I need a job. And stumbled across the Unitech job. And of course, my family being who they were, they kind of brought it to my attention because my mother was one of the original teachers at Unitech when it was originally formed over by Vic Park Market.
Right.
And my stepmother taught there in the dance sector, and I saw this job and went, hey, why not?
And the job was effectively keeping the wheels from falling off.
Yeah, technical assistant, to the maintenance engineer. So basically that meant that I sat in a room in the film school and made sure that all the students didn't break anything and explained how everything worked.
Yeah.
And there was a great testing ground for all my little ideas that I had, and that slowly evolved over time till I was the technical coordinator. So I managed basically all the systems at the film school.
Ended up teaching.
So then I started teaching as a editing tutor, which was great fun. But then, I would have loved to have stayed on, but Auckland got more expensive, and the wage stayed the same, and promotions came and went, and heads of department came and went, and I just wasn't really going anywhere. So, and then I, bought a house and had a child. So it was like, okay, well, I need to kind of go where the money's going. So
making mad cheddar on Avid products at the moment. Is it Pro Tools or just the visual side of stuff?
We just do the visual side of stuff. So I'm an Avid certified instructor. So
but you're selling the gear, right?
We sell the gear. That's my main role at the moment, is selling the gear. Yeah. So, but again, technology, man, it's just like electric cars. It's all changing so rapidly.
Well, funny you say that. At work, I've sort of taken on a role of, we had this amazing Pro Tools HD studio with a big, huge, I think it's called a C25, huge Starship Enterprise post-production desk.
Yeah.
And I took over an audio paper that I think hadn't been... that person won't be listening. Apparently hadn't been run that well. I never met that person.
Yeah.
And as a part of that, in our brand new building, I don't know if you've seen AUT's building, it's only been there a few years, there's this studio sitting there that students just aren't using. Or they're going in with Zoom mics into the dead studio and recording stuff in there. And I'm like, and it's sort of like reminded me when I walked in of like, that elderly person with the plastic all over their couch? Right? So I'm like, guys, we have to use this. And relating to your story, is like, if we don't use this in a year or two, it'll be a doorstop.
Yeah.
Technology, because Avid don't often, a lot of companies don't support stuff after a while. So anyway, finally got people in there. It was like my stubbornness and my vision paid off. I got students with their little swipe cards were allowed to get in there without a tutor in there. Which took some blah 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 blah. So relating to another thing you spoke of, like students and making stuff, sure things go and stuff. It went so well. Yeah. And then about 2 weeks after all the students had left, I went down for my regular quick little check, and someone had like yanked 2 mics out, pulled all these cables out and left them on a big pile in the main room. And I'm like, it's actually, being responsible for all that gear is quite, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and
did you give them a lot of were they allowed in a lot just on their own, and was there pitfalls there? And
yeah. I mean, they were. I mean, you know, with the editing strand, they would get a suite for the time that they were doing the post on their the edit on their short films and stuff like that. But you know, it is funny with technology. Like I always thought when I started teaching, I was like, okay, this new generation, they'll just be totally on it. You know,
binary.
Yeah. They, absolutely. And it's like, okay, so what computer are we using today? Dead silence. Okay, that's a Mac. This is a Mac. Where's the power button? Dead silence. I'm like, really? Yeah, how does this work? Dead silent. You know, I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed because I've always been inquisitive, so I've kind of been interested in how the stuff works. But it's just, you know, they just, if it works, cool. This is how I use it, but no kind of understanding of problem solving.
Or even the capability of, like, you know, I see students with, like, the latest Mac, whatever, laptop.
Yeah.
And it's like that little grey box credit cardy thing does everything that you just described coming up on and learning.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're just on Instagram. Did you know that there's editing software in there? And did you know that you could make a film or an album on that thing?
Yeah. And maybe it's because, I don't know.
Listen to us, young people. There's some bloody good ones too, though.
Yeah. There are. And then when you get those really good ones, you're like, oh, thank God, you know. And the good ones always go very far. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's right. Cream, etc.
Yeah.
We'll get onto the car in a second, but as I say, you and Random Projects, I see you're the CEO of an audiobook company. Yeah,
so that's a little thing I've been working on over the last couple of years on the side kind of thing. So, you know, I've been a podcast listener for many eons. I imported my first iPhone into the country because I wanted one device that could play podcasts and be my phone in my car.
Are you saying you imported an iPhone before anyone else had one?
Yeah. I was walking around and everyone was going, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's an iPhone. I've read about those." You know, I was quite popular with my iPhone for a couple of years there.
That's when I met my current partner.
Yeah. Oh, you've got an iPhone. And through that, I've been into audiobooks. You know, I think the actor part of me has always been liked well-crafted audio. So, listen to audiobooks, and it's always been a bit of a nightmare. But as the years have gone by, people have worked out how to make it work. And I think
what's been a nightmare? Sorry, I missed what's
just the accessibility of them.
Yeah.
You know, like you either need to go and buy the 6 CD set of Lord of the Rings and drag around 6 CDs worth, or if you're going to download it, people were still doing them in, you know, ACC format. So you're downloading 2 gigabytes of data, but now they've kind of got the compression right and they've got the accessibility right, so you can download it on your phone. And now that's happening. You know, Audible and audiobooks.com are kind of taking off. And I started using the Overdrive service through Auckland Public Libraries and went, hold on a minute. There's like 3 New Zealand books in the catalogue, audiobooks to download. Right. Why have we got no New Zealand audiobooks? We've got so many amazing writers. Surely we could do something about that. So I just decided, as I do, to make something. So
where do you record them?
I've been using Sweet 16 over in Newmarket. They're a VTR. They're part of VTR. It's a post facility.
And how do you get, like, are authors just happy to see their work spread further, or are there like anal kind of publishers who are funny? Basically, I'm saying, how does the rights thing work?
So that's why it's taken me a year to get my head around it.
Yeah, it's funny what happens.
You know, I went in with this grand plan of, it'll be no problems. But I finally kind of worked out all the nitty gritty of it. So generally what would happen is, because New Zealand publishers and authors don't really have much money, I mean, the publishing industry as a whole is kind of dwindling a bit. You know, you only get a small run of books.
Funny that, yeah.
And ebook sales are actually dropping. It's audiobook sales that are in the billions these days. So you go in there and you say, hey, I want to make your book. And if they agree, basically...
Hang on, you go to the publisher or the author first?
Either,
okay.
Okay, so if the rights are held by a publisher, I go to the publisher. The publishers have been really supportive.
Oh, right. That's great.
Which is really cool. So, but they can't fund it, so basically I have to fund it.
Right.
Make the book. They get a 20% commission on sales, and I hope that I get my money back.
And
So it's a
how
bit of a
many
gamble.
how many in the can?
Not that many, actually. It's been more working around books that are already made and getting them released.
Books
So
that
have already been made into audiobook format.
Oh, you're not voicing them
No, I am.
Yeah.
I'm making them as well. So I've just finished one called On the Upside Down of the World, which is narrated by Laurel Deviney. Laurel's on Shortland Street. She plays one of the nurses on Shortland Street.
What about do you do the old author voice the book? Because
Yeah, so I've just got one now that I'm about to get the author to voice, and I've got another one that's just been sent to me that we're just doing some sound post on that's narrated by the author. Always a little bit of a risk there.
Well, it depends, if it was like some geezer talking about his life and crime, you kind of want him to read it.
Yeah, but some people do have that tendency to read the book.
Yeah,
and and that flow is a bit disjointed. So
I always found that actually, probably because I've never formally trained as a broadcaster or whatever, but I have noticed when I've heard my voice back, like with radio and stuff, when I read stuff, it sounds nowhere as good as when I'm just kind of there's a definite art to the script read. You know, we teach it in our radio major. Even like I tried doing. Have you ever tried to do a newsreader with you got to accentuate the proper nouns and stuff? That's actually quite a difficult thing to do.
Quite hard
without sounding like stupid.
Yeah. It's quite an art form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just realised with audiobooks that I've gone so down the podcast rabbit hole that I actually realised I don't even listen to music. I listen to about 10% of music.
Me too.
Right.
Me too.
Something to do with getting older as well. Like one of my regular listeners liked it when I said I'm getting like my grandfather was with the little radio in the corner with national radio on all day or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, I was going to say with audiobooks, I just realised I'm woefully out of the loop there. So is the idea it's just someone reading it, so they're not are they ever like a play format where it's actually different people reading the characters?
Yeah. There are dramatisations of books, and some work, some don't. I was just
thinking some of that's a recipe for awful in the wrong hands.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to it's not New Zealand, but if you listen to like the Star Wars books, they're full-on films. Yeah, basically, they're voiced the sound.
The old
effects
school ones. Yeah. Oh, that era is great for all of that.
It's just
Bad Jelly.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff is awesome. Yeah. But the good audiobooks, the ones that I reckon sell and do well, are the ones where you've got one narrator doing all the voices and it's got consistent flow. And it's actually the unabridged books that sell, not the abridged, which means you're just reading all the superfluous stuff that you don't actually need in the audiobook, but that they want to feel like they... when you're listening to an audiobook, you want to feel like you're reading the book and you can make up the characters in your mind as you go. Just like reading a book.
Yeah, that's really interesting thing you point out.
You don't want it fed to you.
Theatre of the mind.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's just really interesting how it all kind of works. But I am looking at doing kind of play readings.
Have you listened to Jermaine and I can't remember who he did it with, but they've done a radio play that's supposed to be fantastic. Like, I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, Jermaine and one of that crew have done a podcast that's fiction that blew up all around the world. Are you a crime? It might be called Mrs. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, are you a sort of there's all these broad podcast categories. Are you a crime podcast guy? You've listened to your serials and your I'm a kind of Radio Lab serial. I love this way we describe things these days.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a long form Mark Maroney kind of Adam Buxton-y kind of. Yeah. Occasional crimey.
Yeah, it's funny, eh? Yeah, there's just too much to listen to, which is half the problem. But
no, there's too much. The intro to my podcast last week was about data overload in terms of watching stuff. I basically said, haven't watched anything for 6 months because just so much was getting. Have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you seen this? Yeah. Take this 20 gig off my hard drive. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I can't.
I just need a break.
I do.
I know.
So I think I want to ask a bit about the car, but I need to disclaimer here, because you'll probably get your EV community listening, is that this is probably the topic of anyone I've had on that I know the least about. So for the EV savvy, please don't shake your head and so on. This is I'm intended as an entry point to my general listeners. Okay. So I guess the first question everyone asks is, where did the idea come from? And I'm guessing it might have been that doco that I watched about the electric car conspiracy.
Yeah. So it all kind of started 2009, sitting at my desk. I mean, the wonderful thing about Unisec is I managed to do lots of projects in my spare time. Saw Who Killed the Electric Car, which is the kind of iconic electric car doco. And if people don't know about it, it's basically about, in the 90s, GM built a really awesome electric car and they leased it out to lots of people. Then they went, they did it because of a law change, and then the law got changed back and they went, we don't want people to have those, even though they were really efficient, everyone loved them, and they got them back and they crushed them. Okay, and this all got covered up, and then through this documentary it got brought out.
But just remind me, because it's been a while since I watched it, the undertone to all of it, or it might even be really explicit, is it's lobbying from big petrol and so on.
So
that makes
the big
all that
petrol
happen.
We don't want to change anything.
Yeah.
We don't really want to change what we're doing or retool the factories or anything. We just want to get rid of it. So they got rid of it.
We also want to keep selling oil because it makes...
Yeah. And I mean, electric cars have been around since the 1800s. I mean, there's a Roush and Lang electric town coupe down in the Southwoods Car Museum out of Wellington.
As introduced by the Chris in the documentary series.
Yeah, exactly. and that thing had it was steered by a tiller, had a little vase with flowers in it. It was hysterical, but very popular.
Yeah.
But they again shelved it. We saw that. Then was watching the old Channel 6, Channel 7, that TVNZ before. Yeah, back
TVNZ 7.
Was it 7? It was 7, wasn't
TVNZ
it?
7,
they're great. Just docos and all that sort of stuff. And there was a guy in Louisiana who made a Datsun, converted a Datsun to electric dragster using cell phone batteries. And I went, that looks really easy.
But hang on, a dragster like it was
it was
able
beating all the petrol cars.
Compete.
Yeah.
Really?
It was light. There's not much
made with old Nokia batteries.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
What do you do? Do you squish them, mush them all together like soap? You know when you get all the old soaps? Is that what you do? Is that how you
just spend a lot of time connecting one to the other to the other?
It is like soap mushing.
It's like anyone who played with Lego or Duplo, same kind of concept,
So you see the doco, you get online and you find a guy in Louisiana who's
built this car.
It. And what era? Sorry, what era are we in here? Like 2010 or era?
So 2009.
2009.
So there's 2009. Petrol had just gone up to $2. My salary wasn't very big. Prices.
That's when it got up to around $2.30 or $2.40 or something.
It was nuts.
Ridiculous. It's going that way again.
Yeah, I know. And I was living out west as I am now, but it was just costing me heaps. And I was like, I just got really pissed off, to be honest. I was like, what? Why? This technology makes so much sense. Why are we not doing it?
Because capitalism.
Exactly. So I just, I
find that funny from what I've learned in the last 24 hours about the process that you went into it as an economic. It's like, I'm going to save some money here.
Yeah. That was the first stage of it. I went, I'm going to save some money, and I love building stuff, and it doesn't look that hard, and we're supposed to be clean green in New Zealand. And
I was going to say that would be the other one that, was obviously the environmental thing, because you basically pull out everything that moves or pollutes or creates, from friction-based heavy particles to oil and gas emissions, blah, 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 all gone.
Goes.
Now, were you... The way you speak of it is like the guy on the internet was a rare find. Were you the first person in New Zealand to...
No. So there's this guy, famous guy. He's famous. Gavin Shoebridge. So Gavin was living in New Plymouth. I think it was New Plymouth. did a little YouTube series, and he kind of did the poor man's conversion, which was getting this nasty Mitsubishi 1989 Tridia, and he ripped everything out, and he put everything in, and he put in lead gel batteries, so the big Trojan, car, truck battery kind of things.
Yeah.
And did this really cool. He's quite quirky, Gavin.
Yeah.
And he did this quite cool kind of YouTube series over 10 parts shot in his garage.
Yeah.
And just step by step. Now I'm plugging this in.
Yeah.
And, I electrocuted myself.
How important for you guys all watching to try and figure out?
Awesome.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a superstar in the conversion world. And, and what I love is all those people are really like, yeah, I'll help you out.
Yeah.
Go here, get that. So then those conversations started.
This is the good side. This is what the internet was intended for.
Absolutely.
This is the good side of the internet. Because that's the other thing I wanted to ask, and I just thought about this as I spoke to you about it, is this something that obviously just didn't stop between 1918 and when the internet was invented?
Yeah.
So is there a history of people doing this over the decades, or has the internet really?
Absolutely.
Has the internet really?
No, it's absolutely been going on. I mean, in the
People mailing each other like handwritten diagrams and stuff. I'd imagine, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I met a guy in Christchurch who made electric trucks out of I think they were forklift motors and bits and pieces and during the fuel crisis in the 70s, I want to say.
Yeah, Carlos days and all of that, late 70s.
So he just went, we'll just build electric cars. So he built 7 electric cars and was starting to...
7?
Yeah, 7. And they're kind of like vans, really. And he was...
built or converted? He actually built...
He built them out of parts of different
amazing.
cars and then started selling them. And then, of course, petrol went down and everyone started driving again. So that kind of went out the window. But there's a history of those little projects for many, many years in New Zealand.
Yeah.
We love building stuff here.
Yeah. Well, also with import laws back then, I'd imagine often we built stuff because
we couldn't
get
it.
stuff in. I'm in this competitive pinball community, which I found quite analogous to your crew, kind of watching it. Talking about helping each other out, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But the stuff I've learned through that, like the reason in the like 70s and 80s when video games became really big globally, that we didn't have, like, say, a game like Frogger, you wouldn't have the amazing original artwork and top panel and stuff visually, is because you just couldn't import that stuff because we had I don't exactly know how it works, but you had to make... It was to encourage local industry. You couldn't import. So that's why we had all these sort of homemade or New Zealand-made generic video game cabinets and all the fish and chip shops and stuff across New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's because someone had to come up with some way to get the games in and making money. And then people would smuggle in, I don't know if you know, it's just a ROM board. That's what your game's on.
Yeah.
So you smuggle that into the country.
And just load it up.
And just load it up, yeah. So why did you choose, and this relates to a lot of the car choices in the admittedly brief amount of research I did. Why? The first thing I thought is, why choose such an old car? Because you chose a 1990 Toyota, and I would have thought, isn't there just potential issues there with rust and so on, with warrants and stuff? Or was it just that you want to start with a cheap car?
Yeah, I mean, financially you want to start with a cheap car, but also, you want to start with a cheap car, a car that you can hopefully get parts for.
Toyota, yeah.
A car that, for me, because I was going down the Docker route at the same time, that someone's already done.
Right.
So I know I could complete it.
Okay, yeah.
Because if I was going on a completely new thing, there's no guarantee. I mean,
Need that third act.
yeah, you know what I mean? So I stumbled across this. I'd seen this car driving around and I went, oh, that's quite cool. Had no idea that the thing had wing doors like a DeLorean. It was just this cool looking thing with a big glass roof. And kind of searched around and then found a guy in Australia who'd converted one.
Yeah.
I went, oh, that's really cool. And when you see someone converting the car, you go, oh, it's possible. That bolt goes there. Oh,
Yeah.
it all kind of starts clicking into place.
Yeah.
So I started searching around and found a totally knackered Toyota Sierra with like a pinprick of rust on it.
Just in case people miss that, what I really like about the car is it's sort of got this crazy retro future thing going on that really suits the project. Where it's sort of like a poor man's DeLorean.
Yeah.
So it's got wing doors and a glass roof. It's like
It's actually built on
the Playmobil from 1990.
Yeah, totally. Everyone apparently in the EV community, according to my co-host, used to call me the EV hipster, which I was totally unaware of.
Fixed gear.
Yeah, and it's actually built on the chassis of a really nasty Toyota Synos, which was great for me because I could get the parts. But
so they were a concept car that just a few of them came into New Zealand, and you found one 30 years later with a pinprick of rust on it.
Yeah, because they're really popular, and they made 3 phases. They had the phase 1, which had the wing doors. Wow.
Yeah.
The phase 2, which had something like ABS and surround sound. And the phase 3, which had air filtration.
But okay, so they were quite popular. So there was actually a lot of them brought into New Zealand. They were
they didn't pass New Zealand regulations at the time, so they imported one in to get it certified, and it's actually at the Southwoods Car Museum, the first ever Toyota Sierra that came into the country, because of the seatbelt placement. At the time, didn't fit the regs, so they couldn't sell them new here, so they've only been imported in.
Okay, so what I'm trying to basically get to the bottom of is, since all of that, is there a handful of them in New Zealand, or did a lot of them come in?
I think there's quite a few. I think you're probably talking, maybe 500,000 of them. I mean, they only made 16,000 of them.
Yeah.
To put things in perspective.
So you get the car, and it must be like. Oh, by the way, I've got to point out to listeners that this is quite important. Although with Theo as a tinkerer and so on, you have no automotive or mechanics background.
No, God.
Yeah,
No,
petrol heads in the family.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No.
So you get the car, you must be like, well, fuck, I'm committed now.
Yeah. So I forked down, $2,000 for this car, pick it up, the thing's got blown out piston rings, so it's smoking like anything, and I've got to get it out of there without getting pulled over by the cops.
Do you tell the owner what you're going to do with it?
He's a bit of kind of a nutty professor type character.
I love this.
And he was a bit dodgy. But I got the car off him, which is the main thing.
So you got to get it home.
Well, at the same time, I'm trying to find a garage, right? So I'm going around everyone going, "Hey, I'm going to build an electric car," and everyone just laughs in my face and go, "Whatever." I'm at Unitech. I'm like, "I'll go to the automotive guys. They'll help me out." They're like, "Yeah, whatever." Stumble across an abandoned garage at Unitech, and next to a workshop. Walk into this workshop, and there's the master carver Lionel Grant, who built the Unitech Mirai.
Wow!
And Lionel, he's awesome. He's just this, really friendly guy in it. And I'm like,
you finally get a yes.
And I go, "Hey, Lionel, I'm looking for a garage. What do you want to do with it? Build an electric car?" He's like, "Awesome." Yes. And I was just like, "Oh, there is a God," And he goes, "Have a look at this." The garage next to it opens the door. He's restoring a 1950 Zephyr.
Wow.
Piece by piece, meticulously. And he goes, "Okay, there's your garage." So he gives me this garage full of crap and a possum. And says, clear that out and you can use it.
But by crap, do you mean tools that would become handy later on for...
No, just bits of
crap.
wood, just crap. And he says, "Okay, your goal is to finish your electric car before I finish my Zephyr," which proved out to be quite easy. So I got the garage. So then once I had the garage, I was kind of committed.
And so you're thinking, what's it going to cost at this stage?
No idea.
You have no idea?
I've got a vague idea. I'm thinking 10 to 20. I've got about $3,000 to my name, and I've spent $2,000 of it on a car.
Yeah. So what happens next? Just take me through this. As I say, I want 3X. I want a catalyst. I want a couple of turning points, and I want a climax and a resolution. Please.
Yeah. So I enlist my mates, Rob and G, who I used to work with at Unitech, and one of the students at the time, Sebastian Telfer, who's now over at Sky, and I go, "Hey guys, I'm going to build an electric car. Do you need help?" And they went, "Oh yeah, that'd be cool."
That's what I love about it. Yeah,
all
the naysayers. You just assemble a bunch of
a couple of mates,
optimistic nutters.
Yeah, they've seen me do some crazy stuff. I've done lots of projection and stuff over the years. So I've helped them out a lot. So they were like, "Oh, we'll help you out." So Seb helps me pick up this car, and we get it in the shed and we clear it out, and then basically over the next month or so, we were like, yeah, we're gunning for it. So I get some film students, they get some cameras, I get your crew, I get some lights, and we rip the engine out of this car with basically some rusty tools.
Yeah.
And realise, it's a Japanese import. We don't have the repair manual, do we? So we don't really know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're just pulling out bits going, I don't know what that is.
I think there's one moment that's quite telling with your automotive knowledge where the radiator was pulled out and you were like, yes, that's the engine out.
yeah. It was a bit of a mistake. But, we were having great fun just playing that one up. And
so you're pulling out anything that's related to internal combustion engines.
Yeah, so
you've got radiator, you've got engine, you've got gas tank, you've got clutch system.
So you can choose to keep the clutch or remove it or keep bits of it. So I keep bits of it. So I remove the clutch itself but keep the gears because an electric car generally just has one gear. Well, two gears if you want to count reverse.
Yeah.
And even then it might not be a gear. It might be an electronic thing. So I went with keeping the gears because the conversion in Australia had done a similar thing, and I could work out how to put them together, bolt it to the gearbox.
Yeah.
So so all that sort of petrol stuff just pulled out, and we sold the engine for scrap, and we just kept the brake system, the 12-volt system, so all the lights and all the componentry there, and kept the air conditioning pump, power steering pump. But other than that, everything came out.
Yeah.
Exhaust pump, gas tank, all gone.
Okay, so it sounds simple from here. You just bung a battery in and drive away, don't you?
Yeah, that's what we all hope. So then the next stage was pretty quick. I think I got a little bit of money from Unitech at the moment because they went, maybe he isn't crazy.
Oh, do you mean they wanted to sort of back it as an educational institution backing one of their own to do a sort of an esoteric
project? Not really.
No.
Not that quite far. They were doing sustainability drive at Unitech, and as a staff member, I could apply for a little bit of sustainability funding. Yep. So I got some of that. And basically, that got me enough money to buy my electric motor from the States.
Yeah.
And so electric motor, you either go direct current or alternating current. I won't go into that because But I got a DC motor and got that into the States, and then found this race workshop who made race car parts and went, okay, you see this gearbox and this electric motor? Yeah, can you join those together for me, please? Yeah. This is how I think it works, and I had all these specs. And they built me this beautiful kind of adapter plate.
Yeah.
So I got the motor in there. That was all going really well. This is probably only a year in, bolt it all together, clean the car up, get rid of all the oil, get rid of all that sort of stuff. And now we've just got to get all the componentry that controls the electric motor in.
Before you do that, does this company in the States, just out of interest, make these for this hobbyist market, or are they just electric motors for things in general?
So there's a lot of electric conversion part suppliers out there, and they've been around forever. Now, as far as I'm aware, conversions aren't regulated like they are here in New Zealand. So anyone can kind of go and convert an electric car, make an electric car. I don't know how the certification works, but I think it's not as regulated as it is here. So I got this awesome motor called the Impulse. They're all named after Star Trek terms. So you've got the Warp 9 and Impulse,
Oh, the Warp 9, that sounds...
Yeah.
So then you go, sweet, it's all going gravy, you just need to put the other components in.
Yep. So I get to that stage and I go, okay, I've run out of money, I've got this electric motor in, filmed some stuff, getting a bit of traction, people are talking about it, what are we going to do next? And so,
where are you showing this film stuff? Just chucking it up online and people
just
are viewing
chucking it up online.
Yeah.
I've got a website going, trying to make something of it. Social
fair,
media wasn't quite what it is
play.
now. It was all kind of... I mean, it kind of tied in with all that development of social media and expansion of that. So it was all kind of new. Everything was kind of new at that stage. And so I went, let's see who else is doing these electric cars in New Zealand. So I did an EV Expo.
Yeah.
So we chucked the car on a trailer and we drove down to Tapak opposite Western Springs there, and nearly ripped the bumper off the car, getting it off the car trailer.
Yeah.
And invited as many EV converters as we could to turn up with their conversions.
How many turned up?
First time we got 3 or 4, I think.
Cool.
Yeah. And there was, guys there had built full-on race cars, and all these little people were coming out of the woodwork.
Out of the woodwork in Auckland. It's like, I live out in Henderson, and here's my electric conversion. Wow.
Yeah.
So before I think I made you go too far forward, because it seems to be you're about to get the components in, presumably before the expo.
So we only had the electric motor in for the first expo. So that's and it was kind of generating interest to try and get some support.
But it wasn't drivable at that point. No,
it was on a trailer.
Yeah.
So we did. Did we do 2 of those? I can't remember whether we did 2 of those.
We don't need to.
Yeah, I can't remember. Can't remember. But yeah, so that all started, and we kept going. And as the build went over, we kept on running those expos, and we got more and more conversions and more people, and we had talks, and
cool.
It really kind of generated a little community around it, Yeah. And I got people coming on board, going, "Hey, I want to help out." So that's
sponsorship wise and stuff.
Yeah. It helped get my sponsorship for my batteries. So that's when it led me to guys in the UK who do this fantastic series called Racing Green Endurance, where they convert a radical race car and drive down the Pan American Highway through trying not to get killed by drug barons. In this electric car that they've built from Cambridge University, these guys are, and got in touch with them and went, "Hey, how'd you get your sponsorship?" I'll talk to Kelly. So I talked to Kelly at this company called Winston Batteries and went, "Hey, I'm building an electric car.
Oh, wow,
I need some
cool.
sponsorship."
International sponsor.
And they went, "Yeah, cool, what do you want?" Can I have $10,000 worth of lithium batteries, please?" "Sure, yeah, we'll send them down. You just need to pay import charges."
They're in the UK?
China.
That's amazing.
So once I had the batteries, I was like, basically that's half, 1/3 the cost of your conversion.
Oh, that's amazing. I thought you footed all the whole cost.
No, then I just had to get the bits that connect the motor to the batteries. So then we just went, okay, shit, they're arriving in a month. Let's get going. But of course, this is all spread out over 3 years. Met this guy called Nick Smith, who's now the CTO of ChargeNet. So ChargeNet's a quick charge provider in New Zealand. And Nick was thankfully an engineer. So he helped me design my battery box to put these batteries in. And Lionel Grant, who gave me the shed, thankfully is a welder. And we just got welding, and we cut out massive holes in the car, and we put these battery boxes in, and we fitted it all up, and it all looked pretty tidy. And Nick was excited because he got to try new ways of fasteners, and engineers, you know what they're like. they're like, "Oh, look at this bolt."
He's excited. I'll just leave him. He's working hard. Yeah.
So thanks to those guys, and we really started going great guns. So. Then the rest of it was just basically over that period of time working with people in the community. When I had money, throwing $1,000 there to buy this and $1,000 there to buy that, and putting the controller in, which is just like a giant dimmer switch, basically.
What controller like the ignition or something? Right?
Yeah. So basically, your accelerator connects to a controller. The controller regulates how much power the electric motor's pulling.
And so when it's all connected up. And I'd imagine it's the great moment.
It's amazing.
Did it go first time?
Yeah, so, one night, Nick, we've got the batteries in.
What was the last thing you put in, or the last thing you screwed on before you went to...
Oh, well, you get quite finicky when you get to that point, don't you? Because you go, the wheels turned, oh my God! Oh, what I want to do is put a really good stereo in now, and I need some cup holders.
Oh, surely you don't put the stereo in before you take it for the first drive.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I wanted to have this thing finished, and I put branding on the side of it, and all that sort of stuff. So I was quite meticulous, and everyone said,
good on you.
Yeah, everyone was quite amazed that I pulled it off, and it didn't look half bad. Everyone was expecting it to be held together with duct tape.
Yeah. Have you got a good photo of you in the car?
I do.
I think we need to get that before we put this episode up, because I think the car needs. Normally it's just a photo of the person, but I think we need to get the car in.
And then you've got to jump through a few hoops to get the car certified. Yeah. So the car was kind of on the road and looking pretty tidy.
Do you think that's don't be a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but do you think that's to do with the petroleum industry, or is it no, it's just
safety.
But you said you don't have to do it in the States. So what interested me, I sort of skipped through episode 2 of your podcast. I didn't skip through. That's selling short. I listened to most of it, and then I had to make some dinner.
Yeah.
But the bit I caught that sounded quite interesting and slightly frustrating was to do with weight and Japanese people and European people.
So that's my big thing. So when you build a car, you pay the LVVTA?
LTSA?
Yeah, Low Vehicle Volume Association,
yeah.
that's what they're called. And they come and send out a certifier and they tell you what they're worried about.
Yeah.
Now, what's great about that is they hadn't seen many conversions, so I was telling them how it worked.
Yeah.
This is the battery. You know, it was
And they're desperate. They're trying to do something to justify the job. I should worry about that third thing you told me about.
I'm worried about the weight of the car. So basically, it came down to red tape at the end of the day. So I built this car based on the numbers. You get the curb weight of the car and the gross vehicle mass.
Is that, in other words, a car with people in it?
Car with people, gas tank and full trunk.
Luggage,
yeah. And then the curb weight. And you've got to work within those weight requirements, okay? And if you do the math, in New Zealand, a person in a car is supposed to be 80 kgs.
Yeah.
So I was taking 2 seats out. So there's, 160 kgs of batteries I can put in. Okay, so it's taking the 2 rear seats out, and then petrol tank, gas tank, so all that weight's coming out.
So this is important to clarify. An electric car is in fact heavier rather than lighter than a regular car.
Not necessarily. If you're really smart, like Nick Smith is, he's doing an MX-5 conversion. You can keep within those requirements. But I was going for range.
So you effectively take your range, right? So you want as much power as possible. So you take the 2 back seats out, which effectively would be 2 people. So you get 160 kg of battery in, and
your motor and your gas tank and all that. And then I have to go and drive this thing illegally to a weighing station and keep measuring it basically as I'm doing all this stuff. And then I'm like, right, cool. And then the certifier turns up and he goes, yeah, Theo, we've just had a little snag. What's that? Well, the car's an import. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the paperwork you can find for the car says that the passenger weight has to be 50 kgs per person, which is apparently how much Japanese people weigh.
Yeah.
And I said, how does that work? So when it comes in the countries, it's certified for 80, but we have to go to the paperwork in Japan, which says it's certified for 50. Yeah.
He wasn't a common sense guy, or he just had to go by the rule of law?
He just had to go by the rule of law.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, if they had sold that car at Southwood's Car Museum in New Zealand and there was a paper record of it, or paper records associated with that car, it would show 80 kgs per person. So I spent months trying to track that paperwork down and couldn't find it. So basically I had to rip out a chunk of batteries, 32 kgs, 32 batteries I brought out, which reduced my range from about 160 k's to 100 k's, which was still plenty, let's be honest.
You could have driven down to the corner and put them back in.
And that's what he said I was going to do. But I also... what
you say on the podcast you didn't, and then there's a little laugh, and I'm like, this is the great unknown.
I may have put one back in. But I'm sure I pulled something out. And the car actually was only certified to carry one person.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. So he was like, pull that seat out, pull those batteries out, and I'll give you the certification plate that goes on your car. So I went...
So he was overall kind of helpful guy. He wasn't being...
He was a really nice guy. He's retired now.
Yeah.
He was really sympathetic, and he really wanted to help me, and he thought it was a really good build. And you know... when we went for the road test and we were driving down the southern motorway and he slammed on the brakes, I shat my pants because I was like, if these brakes don't... I built this car, and if this emergency stop doesn't work right, we're going into that barrier, It's quite interesting. But, the car held up and all passed all the regulations with flying colours once we got that extra weight out. And
they just make a noise like a trolley bus. They just... no noise.
Yeah, there's just a low kind of... Yeah, it's like a trolley bus, I guess, a low hum. It's pretty nice. Once you get used to it...
It must be quite trippy at first driving a car.
Well, it's because you stop at the lights and there's no sound. You'll hear the vacuum pump, which generates the vacuum for your brake system, kick in occasionally, going... keeps it at a certain vacuum.
And do you get a few people like how do I put it? Like, they're on the street, and they know something's not right. You know what I mean? Because there should be noise, but they don't quite click.
Well, I put a little badge on the back, just took away the Sierra sign and put electric, And obviously what I found is people would drive behind me and go... electric, and they'd back up to look for the exhaust pipe. And then they'd go, there's no exhaust pipe there.
It's been neutered.
Yeah, or I'd get to the supermarket and someone would be like, it's not really electric, is it? I'm like, dude, did you hear me drive in here? No. exactly.
How many years did you drive it for?
3 years.
And
It was
you were
my
dri-
daily
you were
driver.
driving your daily driver. That's amazing.
Every day.
So you must have
Saved
it's such
a ton of money.
such a so you did because the bill. If you hadn't have been sponsored, it was like a $30,000. No, is it that high? It was an
Yeah.
expensive project, right?
You can go as nuts as you want with it, but
Yeah.
generally, even for a basic conversion, you're probably looking at about 20. But
So
battery prices are coming down now.
You didn't spend that much with supporting stuff, did you?
I probably chucked in, let's be generous, 10 grand of my own money.
Wow, I didn't. Oh, that's fantastic! Congratulations, and you drove it for 3 years.
Yeah, so
and
drove
you were
it-
spending what on
Well, nothing.
electricity?
Well,
$10.
Oh, no. It probably worked out to $2 to $4 a charge
Yeah,
at home
yeah.
at night.
And then just the
And what I was really proud of is that once it rolled off the assembly line, apart from one embarrassing moment when I was taking my partner to the airport and I blew a fuse.
I knew this car was a bad idea.
Yeah, all that. It just 3 years just kept going.
So it's dawning on me now that you actually, all of this money we pour into cars is mainly because we're dealing with the sort of corrosive, the nature of internal combustion engines, right?
Yeah.
So that's all the stuff we're getting repaired. Oh, yeah, maybe your brakes would need doing. You still need to get your brake drums and stuff.
No,
Why
I
not?
didn't touch it. Well, yeah,
you would. Yeah,
eventually.
Yeah.
But
So I'm starting to see the economic ramifications of this as a cultural change because you knock out a large majority of the mechanic industry.
you do, unfortunately.
You knock out gas stations. I'm right with you, by the way. I'm just saying that I can see how many stakeholders there are in because we are.
But they have to adapt.
No, totally. But that's what I mean. We are slaves to oil.
Yeah,
Our whole world
absolutely.
runs on it. Right?
Absolutely.
Did it make you more kind of militant, more of an activist along the way around these sort of things?
No, I didn't
I
want
just had a sweet car, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to shove it down people's throats.
Good on you.
I've
Good on you,
never
Theo.
been that kind of person, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's right.
If you like it, people who loved it, and people who were going to, the people who came up and went, oh, that doesn't make any sense. What happens if you run out of electricity on the motorway?
Who are these people? Why are people like that?
There were so many. So many.
You sad, angry.
Electricians would come up to me and go, that's ridiculous. You're an electrician. You understand it. You could repair this. You could be the next EV repairman. I mean, it kind of blew my mind. But, they've kind of dwindled off. Come to 2017, they're kind of, swallowing their words a bit.
So what's a hybrid? Hybrid's half...
There's multiple varieties, but it's basically a Prius is your standard hybrid, which has got a battery pack. Yeah. And the electric motor has a the petrol motor has a generator which tops up the batteries, and it's kind of a hybrid thing. So
and the argument for a hybrid is you get more range. Yep, okay.
And save on gas.
The other thing I need clarifying is, or you probably even explaining, is there's, in terms of public places to charge, how many are there kind of in Auckland or whatever?
Well, so if you listen to my podcast, the NZEV podcast, nice little insert there. So D West,
the NZEV podcast.
D West, who's my co-host, her and her husband Steve West, who's started up Serato. You may know Serato.
Right.
They basically went. I met them at my expos, right?
Yeah.
I had a child and dropped off the face of the earth for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And they kind of didn't pick up from where I left off. They were kind of doing their own thing, but they really pushed. They started some beautiful things out there, and one of them was a charging network.
Right.
So
because he made crazy money when he sold out of Serato.
Yeah, I imagine he did. He's got 7 Teslas, and they ain't cheap. 7 electric cars. So they basically
they set up a network.
They set up a network that quick charges your car. So you can get a entry-level electric car, which is a Nissan Leaf, which wasn't available in New Zealand when I was building my car, right? Which is part of the reason I built my car. There was nothing available.
Yeah.
And this thing, basically, you drive your 100 Ks or whatever, quick charge in 20 minutes, grab a coffee, grab a bagel, jump back in the car, do another 100 Ks.
That's the next thing I was going to ask you. Thank you. Is we've gone from you talking about an 8-hour process, which I thought was just how are we going to? That's incredibly impractical, out on the road. So what's changed it to 20? Is it the battery technology, the charging technology has changed?
It's always been around, but it's developing rapidly. So it's a mixture of both. Basically, the charging technology is relatively simple, but it's been built. Yeah. You know what I mean? The battery chemistry is changing. So lithium batteries, like your cell phone, can take enormous amounts of charge very quickly. Yeah. So combine that with the fast charger. So at home, you plug into your outlet, it's 8 amps or 10 amps, right? That's going to take you, 8 hours, 9 hours, which is called a slow charge, a home slow charge, which is fine. It costs you $2 at home, whatever. But if you're going on a long trip and you don't have enough range, you've got to do either a destination charger or a fast charger. So, destination might be a little bit faster, like 15 amps or 30 amps, and you're cutting your charge time down by a couple of hours. And then you go to the big boys, which are the fast chargers, and the fast chargers basically pump in huge amounts of energy and get you up to about 80% of your pack within 20 minutes.
So it sounds like it's quite amazing that two private investors have set up that network.
Yeah.
How many of them in Auckland? Did you already say that? How many stations?
If you go to their ChargeNet website or every day they seem to be launching one at the moment.
And then is it all around the country? Does it have a sort of an FPOS system where
just a swipe card?
Just a swipe card. $5 or whatever instead of 100
for your fast charge.
I just pulled a figure up.
Yeah. So it's pretty cheap. It's an electric car. They've done a study. Electric car over the lifespan of its if you were to take out a loan, buy an electric car, it would pay itself off. Yeah, right. That's basically in maintenance. The cost you pay to maintain your electric car pays, and then eventually it will start paying you.
I wonder what a new Nissan Leaf costs.
Well, they don't sell them here. That's a conspiracy theory. So Nissan don't sell new Nissans and Nissan Leafs. They're all imports. Right. They will be, hopefully, with the new one coming out, they'll start selling them again.
I wonder how much an import would be then. Second-hand import, new import.
10 grand.
10 grand?
Starting at 10, going up to 20, 30.
I just spent 8.5 on a second-hand petrol car.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very nice, though.
Yeah. And for you, in a city, man.
Yeah.
In a city, man.
Yeah. Perfect. Nissan Leaf. Lots of free fast chargers down by AUT.
Are there free chargers?
Yeah, there's Vector and Mercury and those guys are kind of rolling out some free chargers. I imagine they'll charge it.
Charge for the charge.
Yeah. At some stage, but I
think I saw one near I've driven past somewhere in Auckland where there's one set up between a service station and a supermarket somewhere quite major.
But the reality is, you don't need to use those chargers. You only need to use those chargers if you don't have enough range to get home, because it's going to be cheaper to charge at home.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I know that one.
I'm wearing the headphones.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's cheaper to charge at home. Yeah, I'll cheaper to charge at home, of course.
And if you've got an energy provider who's got a special rate, you might get a really cheap rate for charging your car.
So I'll be out there on the street. I just have to run an extension cord through down the hallway.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little bit. But in Wellington, everyone uses the fast chargers because they don't have garages.
Yeah.
So that's when the fast charging comes
right.
into play.
So that's really cool that
the
network's being set on up. Do you? It's total. Do you think that there'll be a mass exodus away from essentially oil and petrol driven stuff? Do you think it's going to happen in our lifetime? Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the stats, all the manufacturers have basically been pushed into making electric cars or plug-in hybrids.
You mean like global lobbying bodies are getting them to do that?
So the cars that are coming in...
So who's leading that? Environmental groups and so on?
Lots of governments and stuff, changing regulations around pollution and sustainability.
Except for Trump. Except for the USA.
So Trump's ditching everything.
Yeah.
If you listen to one of our podcasts, we talked to Chelsea Sexton, who was on Who Killed the Electric Car, and she was going, I hope they don't get rid of the EV incentives, and of course they are now. So that's really sad.
But we stick to the positive. So the fact that change is being enforced, I think, is fantastic.
And countries like the Swedes and Norway and they're basically going, okay, 2020, China 2040, we're not going to sell petrol cars anymore. Can't get one.
There's so many levels to this.
And it just takes.
There's so many levels to this in terms of how it changes things. Because I just thought of another thing. I lived in Melbourne for about 7 years. Okay, and I went back. I've obviously been back a number of times, and I had lunch in the middle of town. Yeah. Trams.
Yeah. Lovely.
Okay. Now, compare that to the diesel buses in the middle of Auckland. So even on like a noise pollution level, the difference in not having really loud vehicular noise everywhere it would be quite trippy waking up tomorrow and the whole transport network was electrified, like from a you know what I'm meaning, from like a person on the street point of view. I feel like the day the earth stood still.
I know,
because we've grown. You're a city boy. I'm a city boy. We've grown up. In just just mechanical noise pollution.
I know.
Right?
I know.
Yeah.
It's quite bizarre. You know, especially if you if you drive an electric car, it's the first thing.
First thing I thought of.
Is the sound. You know, just. And in my car, mine's really soundproof, so I don't really hear anything. I just hear the tyres on the road and the wind and the birds. You know, it's like it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's a fantastic documentary called Charge about the introduction of electric bikes to the race around the Isle of Man, the Grand TT. Is it Grand TT?
Yeah.
And all the drivers are like, it's really trippy because you're going insanely fast. But I just want to put my arms out like I'm a bird because it's just amazing. You know, you're just hearing people having their conversations as you're driving past, and it's a different world. You know.
And so through all of that, just in closing, you've got a film crew around, and are you directing the documentary as well as the? Yeah.
You mean project? my evbuilders.co?
Yeah. Well, what's it called? It's up online. It's called
it's called Convert Me.
I like the entendre. Yeah.
So it was going to be a 6-parter originally. So we got the first 2 up pretty quick, smart, and then the third we kind of did a rough cut. But then basically, you know, it was a long project. So the people who were helping me out, God bless them, you know, they had to do other things, which I totally understand. And I had crews come and go, and it got to a stage where I was getting a bit tricky to monitor the quality of the footage. So the stuff I kind of had towards the end, even though it was the crucial time to be filming it, wasn't that great, and it was just kind of hard to... I didn't have the headspace, really, to think about how I wanted to end it. So I've kind of sat on it for a while.
I think you've popped up on a couple of podcasts and stuff lately, and you talked about it when you came in. I think it could almost be a revival of all of this for you in a way, like getting the doco showing somewhere. And
well, exactly. So I think you know,
I enjoyed what I saw of it.
Yeah, it was great fun. We tried to keep it entertaining, and you know, just I was like, look, I don't mind looking like a complete idiot because half the time I was, but that's part of the enjoyment factor of it, you know. That we pulled it off, A, and B, that we worked it out as we went. And so I think 2018 may be the year I actually finish it. So, you know, now my son's nearly 3, I was like, I've got to get back into the community. I wasn't feeling whole. I had to do something.
That's what I was going to ask as well. Was like my lovable pinball geeks. You've discovered a kind of community and all the stuff that goes with that as well.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's quite trippy because
probably find people with kind of similar values based on the reason that they decided to do it. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, it is changing rapidly. We used to know everyone in the industry, and now there's all these new people. We have no idea who they are, and. But, you know, it was kind of cool. They had the first EV World Expo this year in Auckland, and, you know, it was the proper thing. You know, cars from all the manufacturers, people building stuff, all that sort of stuff.
It's like the world's quietest motorcycle gang.
Yeah. And there's really...
Do they have motorbikes?
Yeah, there's a guy...
Oh, that would be crazy.
You need to listen to my episode.
I will.
With Sice Tacoma. He's a really clever guy. He's converting the trolley buses in Wellington.
Can you tell me that's weird? They've stopped those after all those years.
Well, all they're doing is they're actually turning them into kind of hybrids.
Oh, okay. So it's a positive.
It's a positive. So they're recycling.
While you're talking about the episodes on your podcast, you mentioned you had an American guest on from that film.
Yeah.
What episode's that?
I think it's episode 4.
Episode 4.
Chelsea Sexton's her name, and she is a superstar, an EV superstar, and she sold the EV1 in the early days of electric cars, and you know would lease them. You know, was responsible for getting them into the hand of celebrities, so that when they were crushed, there was a bit of publicity around that.
The Beats by Dre method. You know that? Just get them on people's heads.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's been kind of lobbying governments and talking with countries about rolling out this sort of stuff about EVs. She's got a wealth of knowledge, so she's really cool. She was really lovely to talk with.
Now, I'm no bong smoking, the Rothschilds run the world, Tower 7 kind of guy, but has she had any sort of dark presences in her life as a result of her lobbying and so on?
I'm sure she's got. I think she said she's got some pretty hateful emails and things like that. I mean, there's always going to be
two guys
one.
reading a newspaper outside in a car outside her house.
Yeah. I'm sure there's been a lot of that sort of stuff over the years, but I think that's probably going to start cutting off now because they're on the way here, I saw 3 electric cars.
I like I like the positivity of it. I think too often with the news and stuff these days, it's easy to get caught up and humans are totally messed up. It's all going the wrong way. But there is positive change happening.
There is. And I mean, look, everyone's going on about autonomous vehicles, and that's the next thing is we're going to have basically self-driving EVs.
Have you read, this has come up twice on the podcast, but you've got to go and have a look if you haven't. Have you read about the ethical side of all of that?
Oh,
all these ethical dilemmas they're trying to figure out?
Yes. Yeah.
If you are wealthy and buy the deluxe model, does the software not kill you and kill the person in the other car?
That's awesome. Have you heard? Yeah.
Do you take out the 3? This is to take out. Does the software run over the 3 children on the road or the elderly person? Which one has more value?
Yeah, because the software is getting to a level now where it's going to be able to go. Well, I don't know about old person, but
I just
but
but
short. Did
you want to say short person? What have you got to get short people?
That's the thing. 3 children or a midget, it's gonna get really complex. And they're all, it's not like LiDAR.
Children or a midget. Are we even allowed to call them midgets now?
I apologise. But it's
excellent.
They're all cameras, so it's going to be able to read this stuff. It's not LiDAR, it's not radar, it's cameras.
I mean, look, it's extraordinary, and if anything, feels like the science fiction of the past, it's that. I'm sure I've seen that in something, but I don't think I'd be a beta guy in those cars. I think I'd happily watch.
Yeah.
I suppose they'd load them with... I never thought about this. You'd load them with crash test dummies or similar first, wouldn't you? Yeah.
So that's been going on for the last 5 years. Google's been driving the self car, but now everyone's doing it. So the technology, the processing power to do all this is kind of there now. Like NVIDIA, who make graphics cards, for example. Now they're making a computer that basically does AI driving for you.
Wow.
So all these little guys have been building this stuff on the side. It's all coming together, and it's just bursting out.
So what about this? Automotive accidents, obviously far more prevalent, hugely more prevalent than airline disasters. Are you just as comfortable with a self-piloted Airbus A380?
Let's be honest. All the pilot does is
take
off and the landing.
And then they sleep and do a runny poo in the middle, and that's about it.
That's it. We've been flown by autonomous planes for many, many, many years.
Actually, that's right. It's probably, now I think about it, it's actually probably, in terms of the software and the programming and the design, that's probably far, far, far easier.
Yeah.
You're not dealing with...
You don't have to deal with the randomness of drivers.
Yeah.
They've been pumping these cars through, this is a fun fact, pumping these car autonomous AI programs they're putting in their cars through Grand Theft Auto 5.
They're what? Sorry, I didn't miss that. I don't know what you mean.
So they're putting their AI brains... And they're putting them in a car and they're driving it through Grand Theft Auto 5 because all the traffic infrastructure is there.
Wow.
So it can just practice driving around this.
So that's sort of an inadvertent props to the designers of Grand Theft Auto that it's obviously that well coded and designed that it's a real world simulation.
Yeah, so cars are going to stop. People are going to randomly walk out in front of cars.
Midgets.
Midgets. Old people. Yeah.
I think we can. Hey, it's been a pleasure. I think that's quite a interesting place to lead off, and I do think I think that you should getting the doco done is the
Yes.
next project.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I really enjoyed what I
absolutely.
saw, and I think the whole story. It's a way of telling the whole story to the public, and
Yeah.
it was quite an accessible way of doing so as well.
Yeah.
I thought.
I hope people still convert cars, even though electric cars are really cheap. I think.
Well, like anything else, the conversion process will probably get cheaper. And the other thing is the more people you get involved, the lower the costs get, right? Because
Exactly.
it's not as
Yeah,
obscure.
yeah.
Thank you, Theo.
Hey,
Just before
pleasure,
you,
Lewis.
Before you go, just tell us where people can find the first part of the doco up online, and tell us what your podcast is.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to see the first part of the doco, just go to evbuilders.co.nz, and that will take you to the links of the doco, which are actually on Vimeo. And if you want to listen to D West and my podcast, you just go to the NZEV podcast on Facebook, or you can jump on to podcast.nz, and we're listed on there as well, and we're on iTunes and all that. So,
And it's a very specialist topic, and I listened to one last night, and they're very entertaining. It's one of those things where it's
we try and
entertaining,
have
whatever the
fun.
subject. Yeah.
We try and have fun, and we may not be technically accurate all the time, but I think it's an enjoyable listen.
We have to let Samir in here and go now. Okay.